one of the things she gave him was Rogette's Thesaurus and a book in terms of poetry and rhymes, and he put him to use in terms of what he did.
If you're just joining us, of course, we're speaking to Professor Harry Elam Jr., who is a professor of drama at Stanford University and author of several books, including The Past as President in the Drama of August Wilson. We're speaking about his little brother, they're known as GURU. And, of course, GURU stands for Gifted Unlimited Rhymes Universal. And you spoke about your mother, an ex-librarian, giving him books. He certainly didn't come from the stereotypical background of a rapper. Your father was a judge, your mother, Barbara, the co-director of libraries in the Boston public school system. So here's a man who hails from some pedigree, if we can term it that way, intellectually, even culturally and racially. And was that the basis of not only his deep and profound engagement with the world of ideals, the cerebral intensity that he brought to his music, and then therefore forging a connection between jazz and hip-hop, coming from, again, that cultured sphere of production among the black middle class, as well as the refusal to kowtow to the misogynistic impulses and the kind of gangster preoccupation that quickly became au courant?
Well, I think he was clearly shaped by his experiences, and one of those experiences was growing up in our family, growing up in Boston, growing up as the son of as you said, a judge, and the judge who was the leader and the first black judge of the Boston Municipal Court. So that sense that people knew who you were, growing up, and he had to respond in some ways to that. But also, what my brother did was, in some way, to buck tradition in terms of that upbringing and background, that when he decided what he was going to do, that when he went to New York, he lived in Brooklyn, and in Boston, he had experiences that were outside of middle-class typical experiences, that he saw himself and saw not only that sense of that background shaping him, but the streets of New York, but dealing with the hard knocks of trying to make it in an industry that's not that easy to make it in, that you have to find a way in, dig, fight, reaffirm that your own commitment. And the people around him, in terms of that change, some who were loyal to him and he was loyal to since he was in Boston, others who he became involved with as he moved to New York. And that idea that, he can hear in some songs where he sings about Brooklyn, the borough where I live, or as well as changing his name from when he was in Boston, he was going by the name Keith E as a rapper from Boston, but as he moved to New York and there, so that sense of really being enriched by that environment is part of the music too. Nonetheless, I think the background that you talked about before, and things that are ingrained in terms of his upbringing from parents, etc. And as I mentioned before, that sense of commitment to what it means, in a sense, to be not as a black middle class, separated from the race, but really engaged, as my parents were, in caring about community and what that means. You can find that presence in terms of his music as well. So the combination, I think, impacted him. In the piece I mentioned that my grandfather, as well, he dedicates the album to my grandfathers and the first jazzmatazz, as well as to his godfather, George H. Johnson. And growing up, Keith would be listening to, certain R&B music, whatever, but my grandfather or George H. Johnson, his godfather, would play jazz for him and play the music and say, check this out. And I think that sort of influence impacted him and got him to think about other sort of riffs that he could sample and use, and a different direction that he might take hip-hop music in terms of using and creating, in a sense, a fusion between jazz and hip-hop. So that song, it's a jazz thing, was that song of sort of that talks about the history of jazz and what it was, and that investment sort of in the cultural history of African Americans was something else, I think, important to him, and I think that he had been steeped in and that he cared infinitely, about. And so for him, And in terms of the Jazz Mataz albums, all of them sort of speak of that relationship and the legacy that went before and how hip-hop is indebted to and building on that legacy. And so he saw hip-hop, in terms of his investment, as being more than just in a sense of movement, being a sense of an ideology, a culture, a thing, that had an importance and that he wanted to represent in certain key lights and positive lights and think about the power it could be that somehow art could have an impact beyond just music in people's lives.
We're speaking to Harry Elam Jr., drama professor at Stanford University and brother of the late rap artist Guru, here on the Michael Eric Dyson Show. I would be remiss not to speak about your specialty, drama. You're an August Wilson scholar, and you also talk about the history and development of black dramatic arts. And now that you're director of the Committee on Black Performing Arts at Stanford, how do you feel about the state of black performing arts? We're in an era that has Alvin Ailey on stage, the Fela musical on Broadway, yet most minorities are more familiar with the Tyler Perry plays and Dancing with the Stars. No disrespect to either one of those. As you see it, how do these totally different interpretations of performing arts and the chosen genre through which they articulate their understanding exist together?
Well, that's a great question, and it's interesting that one of the things that Tyler Perry cites is the word from August Wilson, and August Wilson telling him that basically to go on and do your thing and follow your direction, man. And I think what we see in the drama of August Wilson is a drama that's touched on the cross-cultural experience of people or black people in the world. By that I mean that Wilson is able to look at African-American experience and to see and probe the questions of life in ways that reaffirm us as African-Americans, but also ask questions that speak to potentially people outside of African-American experience. He was the most popular playwright in the 1990s in the United States. He is going to be the most popular playwright produced in the current decade, which means that people outside of just African-Americans are going to see him, that he's reached an audience across. What will be telling and interesting to see with the plays that you mentioned in New York in terms of Fela, in terms of Fences with Denzel, is if they bring a different audience to Broadway that is willing to see these plays. The thing about Tyler Perry that's interesting is that while Fela and Fences got incredible reviews in the New York Times, is that Tyler Perry's critic-proof. It doesn't matter what the New York Times says, that by radio, by other play, means black people are going to go see his plays, and people we've talked before about the middle class in terms of that it's not just the masses that are seeing Tyler Perry. It's across black people. He's hit on something that is successful and that speaks to people's experience. So while it may be easier to say that that he speaks and trades in some ways in stereotypes or images of like Medea that may not be positive, that you got to see that he's doing something that's reaching people and is speaking to experience and entertaining them, and how that can in the future, speak to a part of black experience and black entertainment. How that's going to connect with the work that's happening in terms of the more sort of arts-based or what we see as the mainstream theater is a question I think the future is going to ask. And Tyler Perry's pushing that himself. He's supposed to be bringing Ntozake Shangi's 1975 play for colored girls. He's going to be stage that. So he's trying to push those borders himself in terms of audiences, in terms of questions, and in terms of genre, that he works not only in film, but in theater. So, I'm sort of excited about where black arts are, that we're potentially working into a new phase.
We've been speaking with Harry Elam Jr., professor at Stanford University and brother of the late rap artist Guru, and an expert on drama and black drama. And we thank you so much for joining us on the Michael Eric Dyson Show.
Thanks for having me, and thank you again for your concern for my brother.
That's it for today. The Michael Eric Dyson Show is a production of WEAA on the campus of Morgan State University with funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I'm your host, Michael Eric Dyson. Until tomorrow, be good to yourself.